Welcome to Tip Ted on Tuesday at Tallahassee Harley Davidson. Thanks for joining us today as we discuss this safety recall 173, which does affect some 17 and 18 touring bikes and some Softails. I have been getting a lot of calls on this recall with people wondering exactly what the problem is, how long it takes to make the repair, and should I drive my bike knowing that there's a recall like this. This recall does involve the clutch actuator, piston assembly, which is located on the right side of the bike, on the transmission side. To better understand this, I'd like to just explain a little bit on how the clutch system works, the hydraulic system. There's a series of components that are involved to make this clutch actuator work. You have a master cylinder, necessary lines, you have the clutch actuator, you have a push rod that goes from one side of the engine transmission to the other side, which actually lifts and pushes a pressure plate in and out, which disengages and engages the clutch plates. And so the master cylinder, which has a piston in it and a reservoir, applies pressure. It applies pressure to the line, which applies pressure to this actuator, and it moves a piston inside the actuator, which in turn pushes the push rod. So if there's any leakage or a breach in the system and air should get into the system, you can possibly lose your clutch operation. And what they were finding with some of the bikes was that the piston actuator, which has seals here on it and sits inside the bore, which is the actual actuator. This is the piston, this is the actuator bore, and this sits inside of the bore and it seals. They were having trouble with some of these seals leaking past the seal, and the oil would go into the transmission. But the bigger problem was if the reservoir in the clutch master cylinder gets too low, what happens is you take on air, you're trying to compress air. Air is breaching the system. So therefore it's causing this piston to not give enough lift to the push rod, and the clutch is not releasing all the way. So people would have problems maybe getting into neutral or possibly getting into gear or starting the bike and it would lunge. So with that said, it's important that if you did get a notice in the mail for this safety recall, to call your local Harley dealership and set up an appointment to get this recall performed. As far as how much time it takes to do the actual recall, it could take 2 to 3 hours. I get the question asked all the time about whether or not you should ride the bike or not, and I cannot answer that question for you. I will say this is a voluntary recall, but it is a safety recall by Harley Davidson. They are working with Brembo to produce these new pistons and seals. They do have high standards for this, so they're a little slow to get them out to us, and most dealerships do have a waiting list. So I would strongly suggest getting a hold of your Harley dealership, call and confirm that your bike is on the list, and make an appointment. Thanks for joining us today at Tallahassee Harley Davidson. I hope this was helpful for you with this recall. Please share and like us on Facebook. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you have any questions, you can call us here at the dealership or any of our 5 dealerships. And if there's anything we can do to help you out, just let us know. Thank you.